Welcome to a play-by-play review. I'm your host, Henry, and we have a lot of news to go over, as well as just a couple other points of order before we get into the NFC South. So just to go over a little bit, so next week, I believe the 11th is when it officially starts. Wednesday, the 11th, is when free agency officially starts for the NFL. So obviously when I do Tuesdays for my episodes, and I'm going to keep doing my usual NFL recap stuff, or like conference recaps essentially, or I guess division, not conference. Sorry. I'm going to do that next Tuesday. And I'll go over some news, I think, during the opening segment, but I will save, I think, free agency. I don't know. I'll figure out what I want to do, but I think either Thursday or Friday, depending on how things go, and also like how much time I have. I might also just save it and make it my Saturday episode as well. But I will be doing a separate episode on NFL free agency, so don't worry about that. I'm most certainly going to be covering NFL free agency because it's always a fun time. Obviously, a lot of stuff has already kind of started a little bit with trades and releases and whatnot, and franchise tags. Actually, the deadline for franchise tags was today as of recording this, much earlier in the day, back at 4 p.m. And so, yeah, there's like the NFL machine's already been, it's not stopped whatsoever. We had the combine this past weekend as well. I'll go over a little bit of that in just a second. But yeah, we'll go over news, just kind of covering stuff that has happened in the week since my last episode on the NFL. We'll start with the Tennessee Titans. They actually made multiple moves. The first one was cutting their starting center, Lloyd Cushenberry, I believe former Denver Bronco, who they signed back in 2024, I believe, to a big 4-year contract. They have since now released him, so they are in need of a center like many teams, and I'll be going over a few more, actually, as we go on. So then, speaking of the Titans, they also made a pretty decent trade here, trading away some former second-round pick in 2024 at defensive tackle T'Vondre Sweat to the New York Jets in exchange for former first-round pick pass rush specialist Jermaine Johnson, who was, I believe, 2023 was when he was drafted. So interesting trade there. Jets, obviously without Quinnen Williams anymore, need to really beef up that defensive line. And I guess Jermaine Johnson just wasn't really working out with them as they'd hoped. So the Titans kind of trade away someone on a line where they like interior defensive line. I feel like the Titans are pretty set there, with Jeffrey Simmons. And I feel like I'm forgetting who else is on there, but they might even run a 3-4. I don't remember exactly, but it does seem like they were, like T'Vondre Sweat, while a good player, was someone on the Titans that they could afford to trade away. And like outside pass rushing, so defensive end, off ball linebacker, whatever you want to call that sort of area for pass rusher, was something that they needed. So interesting trade there. Next up, the Colts are planning on trading, or basically allowing Anthony Richardson to seek a trade. So there's almost a certainty at this point that Anthony Richardson will no longer be part of the Indianapolis Colts. So huge miss there by Chris Ballard. It's obviously, in hindsight, you don't want to make the pick, but it's like, I get it when they're making the pick back in 2023. Because, they really needed a quarterback. They'd been on the the quarterback carousel for years, ever since Andrew Luck retired. And it was a big swing, big miss, unfortunately. They got lucky with Daniel Jones for the first half of the season, I should say. Maybe not the second half of the season, but we'll actually get a little bit more to Daniel Jones in just a second. But yeah, so most likely expect to see AR5 somewhere, most likely as a backup in 2026. So moving on to the Commanders, who made a couple moves. First was a little bit of a confusing one where they, actually it was both two releases, I should say. One confusing, one expected. So I'll actually go over the expected one, which was the Commanders releasing Marshawn Lattimore. Lattimore, who had torn his ACL in week 9, I believe. It was against the Seattle Seahawks. And it was also his play was kind of declining throughout the whole year. Like, he definitely had some good games, but there were also some really bad games. And his contract was left over from his time in New Orleans. So I think it was $18.5 million. So not surprising whatsoever there. Unfortunately, trade does not work out for the Commanders at all. It did a little bit because he did help them in their playoff run in 2024, but 2025, well, everyone was terrible in the Commanders, basically. Then the move I was a little confused about was the Commanders releasing center Tyler Biotish, who definitely had a pretty good 2024 season, definitely took a step back in 2025, then also tore his ACL late in the season. I believe it was a torn ACL at least. I know he got injured late in the season. I'm pretty sure it was an ACL tear. And I was surprised because he was a pretty solid, like above average, it felt like, starting center, and releasing him. And he's not really wasn't really a cap issue either. Like he was not getting paid all that much. And I think the Commanders eat like $8 million in dead cap this year. So I'm not quite sure. I think it's like they're just trying to get healthier and maybe different look, like scheme fit wise. Don't know. We'll see how the Commanders approach the center position. They also re-signed, I think I wrote this down later on, but I believe they re-signed both. They re-signed Nick Allegretti. I think I wrote down that they re-signed Andrew Wiley, but I think that was actually wrong. I think they released him. But yeah, I think there's like a chance Allegretti moves to center, but I don't know, maybe they pursue Tyler Linderbaum. We'll see. This is a move that I was a little confused about. But anyway, moving over to another NFC East team, the Dallas Cowboys are placing the franchise tag on George Pickens. So he is staying in Dallas for at least 2026, if not more, depending on how the contract talks go with George Pickens over the next year. But at least for 2026, at least to start, and who knows, they might trade him depending on how things go, but I doubt that. So most likely for the entire 2026 season, George Pickens will remain a Dallas Cowboy. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs are planning on releasing tackle Jawan Taylor, who they signed to a big contract from the Jaguars back in, it was either 2022 or 2023, one of two. It was a few years back, and Taylor did not really work out for the Chiefs whatsoever, and he has since been, well, I believe it's like officially that he has been released, saved the Chiefs about like $20 million in cap space, so, you know, it's pretty big. And yeah, so the Chiefs are moving on there, frees up a lot of space, which they desperately need. Next up, there are a lot of offensive line moves in this past week. I'll just say that. There's a lot of offensive line stuff. So the Texans actually made a pair of trades here. The first one was trading away former first-round tackle Titus Howard to the Cleveland Browns for a fifth-round pick. I think it was largely as a salary dump because they were paying Titus Howard a lot of money, and the Browns were willing to. I don't know how much they're taking on in terms of his contract. I believe they're taking on a good bit. But still getting a like above average starting caliber tackle for a fifth round pick, not too bad. Browns definitely needed a tackle, so I don't mind this trade either way. Though I'm still a little bit worried about the Texans' offensive line. My guess is they will probably address it more in free agency in the draft, but we'll see. They're definitely getting a lot younger on the offensive line, that's for sure, for the Texans. The other move that they made was trading the Texans, I should say, trading a fourth round pick, a seventh round pick, and then offensive lineman Juice Scruggs, who I don't remember off the top of my head where he was picked. Let me just check that real quick. I should have checked this earlier. But he was like pretty young guy. It's a 2023 second round pick at tackle out of Penn State. He has since been traded along with those picks to the Detroit Lions for David Montgomery. So the Lions, I think, had kind of been known that they were planning on shopping David Montgomery for a little bit, but yeah, it's Texans needed a running back. I mean, Woody Marks was not bad, but you know, you could use a little bit more punch for the Texans running game. Obviously, Joe Mixon dealt with that mysterious injury that kept him out for the entirety of 2025. So yeah, I don't mind this move. To be honest, I mean, I don't know too much about Juice Scruggs, so I don't know how good he was, but I like the idea of bringing in David Montgomery for the Texans. I don't think he's like a superstar running back, but having him be the lead back and putting Woody Marks as like in the David Montgomery role, kind of, I think it would be interesting. And then for the Lions, I mean, they get more help on the offensive line, which they desperately needed. And then more draft picks in general. And they're also going to just let Jahmyr Gibbs be the centerpiece in the backfield. Obviously no more Sonic and Knuckles, but I mean, even in 2025, David Montgomery took a big step back usage wise compared to 2024. So not super surprising there that the Lions were okay with moving on from David Montgomery. Next up, also concerning the Lions, they have released former offensive lineman Graham Glasnow. Spent, I believe, all 7 seasons, if I remember correctly, with the Detroit Lions. And he was an offensive guard, I believe. He was not all of his tenure with Detroit, but he was drafted in 2016 in the 3rd round by the Lions. Was there till through 2019, then spent 2 years in Denver, then came back to Detroit for his 3 years. He's since been released. So the Lions, kind of like the Texans in a sense, they're looking to really shake up their offensive line. And we'll see how they approach it in free agency and the draft. Next up, the New York Jets franchise tagged running back Breece Hall. A little surprising since they were trying to trade him, I think, to the Kansas City Chiefs in the 2025 deadline, though that did not end up happening. So instead of letting him test free agency, they are instead slapping the franchise tag on him. Don't know if they're actually going to try and extend him at all. I honestly kind of doubt it, but I don't know. He's staying in New York for the time being. Next up, very big surprise here, actually. Drew Dolman, who the Chicago Bears center, who was actually praising a lot last week in my recap of the NFC North. I forget if he made All-Pro, but he definitely made a Pro Bowl with the Bears in their revamped offensive line. He's actually retiring at the age of 27. So I think it's like kind of medical concerns here and there, and like he's looking out for his own health and whatnot. But it's still a bit of a pretty big surprise here. Really hurts the Bears since they obviously lose, very good starting center. So now there's suddenly a lot of teams that have a big gap at center. The Bears, surprisingly, are one of them. Next up, the Colts are placing the transition tag on Daniel Jones. So it's basically, I think it's that he can talk and come to terms with a contract with any other team out there, though the Colts are also have the ability to match that price tag if they so desire. So it's not the franchise tag where he's required to stay. It's more nebulous than that. So there's probably still a good chance that Jones remains in Indianapolis, but there's a chance if someone like gives him a lot of money and the Colts don't want to match it, that Daniel Jones could be playing somewhere else in 2026. Next up, Kyler Murray is actually getting released by the Arizona Cardinals. This was not super surprising. It was kind of like it was basically like, were the Cardinals willing to eat all the dead cap that was that would come from releasing Kyler Murray? But I don't think it was like the biggest surprise in the world because, Kyler has not been playing well for a good bit, and new coaching staff and new management. So no more Kyler Murray in Arizona. Curious to see if he decides to go back and play baseball. The now Sacramento A's actually hold the rights to Kyler Murray since they had picked him, I believe, 10th overall in the 2018 MLB draft, though he absolutely did not sign with them. He instead has been playing football for the past, 7 years at this point. But yeah, we'll see if Kyler decides to stay in the NFL or go to baseball. But it should be interesting either way. Then finally, for news up till this point, in terms of people not franchise tagged, those include Trey Hendrickson of the Cincinnati Bengals. So he's probably the biggest free agent on the market. Kenneth Walker, Super Bowl MVP, is also not going to franchise tag, so he is a free agent. Don't know if Seattle's going to try and bring him back or not, or if they're going to let him walk and just roll with something else at running back. But there's probably a good chance they try and bring him back, I would assume. Travis Etienne's also not franchise tagged, I believe. This is one I'm not super confident on. Like, I know he's not franchise tagged, but I'm pretty sure he's a free agent at this point. Former first-round pick by the Jaguars in 2021. And, I mean, I don't know if Jacksonville's going to want to bring him back. He did have a bounce-back season with Jacksonville, but it'll be interesting to see where Etienne winds up. And then also the big one is Tyler Linderbaum not being franchise tagged by the Baltimore Ravens. So, I mentioned, multiple teams losing their starting center. Tyler Linderbaum is going to get a lot of money, whether it be from Baltimore, going back there, going to the Chargers, going to the Bears, going to the Commanders, going to the Titans. There's a lot of teams out there that need a starting center, and Linderbaum's, I think, the top one on the market right now. So we shall see. But anyway, let's move on to recapping the NFC South. Start with the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers had come off of a 5-12 season. Really not good at all. There are a lot of questions around Bryce Young, though he did kind of go on a bit of a decent run towards the end of 2024. So there was he was still clearly the starter going in. And other than that, it was, I don't think there were a lot of expectations. This was the first time since he was drafted that Shaq Thompson was not on the Carolina Panthers. He was their first round pick in 2015. So first time in about 9 years that no Shaq Thompson for the Panthers. So a new era kind of for them on defense. And they wound up, it was interesting. So let me actually see if I can find their free agency real quick. It is, here we go. So among the moves that the Panthers made, so they parted ways with running back Miles Sanders, who did not have a very good time in Carolina in 2024, from what I remember. They replaced him basically with Rico Dowdle, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys, basically on a 1-year prove-it deal. And he did pretty well, not going to lie. Kind of paired him up with Chuba Hubbard. They also handed out a pretty big contract extension to J.C. Horn, their former first-round pick in 2021, I think. Pretty sure that's when it was. They also signed a couple guys. So they signed Mike Jackson at cornerback, not to be confused with the former pop singer Michael Jackson. They also brought in Trayvon Merrick over from former Raiders pick, and a lot of smaller moves like Nick Scott at safety, David Moore at wide receiver, and nothing. I didn't feel like there was anything super huge from what I can remember. Let's see. What does Spot Track say was the biggest? Trayvon Merrick was the biggest one, 3 years, $51 million. Tershawn Wharton was a defensive lineman over from Kansas City, 3 years, $45 million. Bobby Brown, defensive lineman over from LA, 3 years, $21 million. Patrick Jones, edge rusher, 2 years, $15 million. The Michael Jackson signing, re-signing actually was pretty good. Same with the Rico Dowdle signing. So there's some actually not bad moves by the Carolina Panthers in free agency. Then going into the draft, they had the 8th overall pick. They selected Arizona wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan, which was a really nice selection. Pretty obvious selection. The Panthers really needed wide receiver help. And Tetairoa McMillan was the consensus number 1 wide receiver in the draft. And he had a pretty good season. Not gonna lie. We'll get into that in just a sec. They also selected Texas A&M edge rusher Nick Scorton in the 2nd. They also picked up Travis Etienne's brother, Trevor Etienne, Georgia running back, in the 4th round. And some other various picks here and there that I don't think contributed too terribly much. I could be wrong, but please feel free to correct me, Panthers fans. So the Panthers went 0-3 in the preseason. They lost to the Browns, Texans, Steelers. Then started out against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 1 in Jacksonville, losing 26-10, and then followed it up in Arizona against Arizona in Arizona, losing 27-22. Then it was the Atlanta Falcons game, and for some reason, Bryce Young always seems to just go insane against the Falcons. The Panthers won 30-0, and I still cannot get over this game. It was insane. The Falcons were, I don't think they were incredible, but this is very strange. I don't know what was going on here. They proceeded to follow this up by just getting stomped by the Patriots in Week 4, 42-13 in New England. It was, okay. They did actually bounce back after that. They would beat the Dolphins 27-24 in Carolina. Then they would follow that up, beating Dallas 30-27. Rico Dowdle had a 239-yard scrimmage game. In this, he was going absolutely crazy. There was a stretch in, I think it was week 6 and then week 7. Or it was like a stretch of like 2 to 3 games when Chuba Hubbard went down with an injury. Rico Dowdle had like 200 yards in like back-to-back games. It was crazy. It was I meant to pick him up in fantasy football, and then I forgot, and then I was very sad because he was going off. But yeah. Then after that, week 7 was at New York. The Jets, I should be specific. They would win a pretty ugly game, 13-6. It was, I think kind of what you expect from a Panthers-Jets game. Then they would play against the Bills in week 8, at home, and get just demolished, 40-9. So you can kind of tell they were 4-4, and certainly, They showed flashes here and there, but they were not like a spectacular team. I'll just say that. They were a fun team to watch, but not, no one was picking them to win the Super Bowl. They would actually in week 9, though, secure a win over the Packers of all teams, winning 16-13. Ryan Fitzgerald, their, I believe, rookie kicker. Rookie undrafted free agent kicker that they picked up out, where is he from? Florida State University. That's where he went. Former Seminole nailed a 49-yarder to win it for the Panthers. He actually had a pretty good season overall for the Panthers, so they might have their kicker problem solved for a good bit. Week 10 was a divisional matchup against the Saints, and that went the Saints' way, 17-7. I believe at this. Actually, don't remember if this was a Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shuck start. I might go into that when we get to the Saints in a little bit. After that, week 11 was another game against the Falcons. And, of course, once again, Bryce Young was going insane. Wasn't quite, I think, as great as he was in week 3. But the Panthers overall was still playing well. The defense was not playing as great. But it was one that, another good game from the Panthers. They actually go to overtime. And they would win. They would actually sweep the Falcons for the first time since 2013. Pulling off the 30-27 victory. It was certainly interesting. We saw kind of more out of Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker. Jalen Coker, former, I think, undrafted wide receiver in 2024 out of Holy Cross, has kind of emerged into the wide receiver 2 spot for the Panthers, taking over that spot from Xavier Legette, who has not panned out whatsoever as the 32nd overall pick in 2024. He had like up and down 2025, but Legette overall has been a bit of a disappointment for the Panthers so far. Bryce Young also threw for 448 passing yards in this game, breaking Cam Newton's record, which is kind of nuts because you're not really expecting that out of Bryce Young of all people. But hey, good for him. Like he's just like not the guy who like is really chucking a deep all the time. So. You're just not expecting him to throw for a ton of yards. But hey, he did in this one. Week 12 was against San Francisco, and the Panthers would not fare nearly as well. They would lose in San Francisco 20-9, falling to 6-6. So they're just really a 500 team. Like they could pull off some good games here and there, but then they would also just shut down otherwise. The good games, though, actually continued as they would play against the Rams, who were a Super Bowl favorite at this point, going into Los Angeles, and they would actually upset the Rams 31-28. Mike Jackson had intercepted Matt Stafford. I think it was like his first interception on this. I don't remember if it was on the season or if it was like in a good while, but Mike Jackson was having an insane game, and Bryce Young was having a really good game as well. It was kind of crazy. I was losing my mind when I saw this summary. Week 14 was the bye for the Panthers, so they were sitting at 7-6 and certainly in contention to win a very weak NFC South. Week 15 was once again against the Saints, and this one was definitely against Tyler Shuck. And once again, the Saints proved victorious. They would win 20-17, forcing the Panthers to fall to 7-7. And it was just one where Panthers really needed this if they wanted to make it to the playoffs, because again, it was really weak NFC South. It was really largely between them and the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers were going through their own struggles. I'll go over to them in just a second. And they would actually meet as they went basically week 16 and 18 were both against the Buccaneers. And week 16 was in Carolina. And this one was one where the Panthers would emerge victorious, 23-20, and it really helped them out with their playoff chances. So bouncing back from the bad divisional game they had the week before, they had a much better divisional game this week in Week 16, narrowly edging out the divisional rival Buccaneers to really take hold of the NFC South. Week 17 was against the Seahawks, and no surprise here, the Seahawks won 27-10 in Carolina. It was a slow first half. It was tied 3-3, and then the Seahawks just exploded in the second half. The eventual Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks, so not too surprising there. Then in Week 18, it was a rematch against the Buccaneers, though I believe at this point it was the Panthers could afford losing this as long as I think the Falcons and Saints matchup had to go. I think it was the Saints had to win. I don't remember exactly, but it was basically the Falcons I think had to win, and then the Bucs had to win as well for the Bucs to get in. Otherwise, the Panthers would lose game 16-14, and the whatever matchup it was between the Falcons and Saints that I don't remember off the top of my head. I'll actually get to that in just a little bit. Actually, I don't know why I didn't start with the Atlanta Falcons, not the Carolina Panthers, because I've been doing this in alphabetical order, but for some reason, when I was going through this, it listed it the wrong way. But yeah, no, I'll get to the Falcons. I just realized that now. But yeah, the Falcons would, whatever that result, however the result went, it went in favor of the Panthers, so they would actually make the playoffs at 8-9. I believe the fourth or fifth team in NFL history to make the playoffs at a sub 500 record, where they would play a rematch against the Los Angeles Rams in the wild card round. They would fall to the Rams 34-31 on a very good game. It was just one that, in the end, the Panthers defense clapped late. They had the lead going into around the 2-minute warning. Stafford hit, I believe, Puka Nacua for a really clutch touchdown towards the end, and the Panthers just didn't have enough time to mount a comeback drive. But still, it's, taking a good team in the Rams to the brink in the playoffs, not too bad. So there's definitely a lot of room to work with for the Panthers going into 2026. They hold the 19th overall pick. There's certainly plenty of options available. We'll see where they go. I'm not going to try and do a mock draft because I'm not very good at them because I don't pay attention too much to college. So quickly here for statistical leaders, their offense was actually 27th ranked overall according to Pro Football Reference. Defense was 15th in points and 16th in yards. So the defense actually wasn't too bad. The offense could use some work. Bryce Young had just over 3,000 yards, 3,011 to be specific, 23 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. So it certainly wasn't an amazing season, all things considered. I think he also got injured one game, and Andy Dalton had to come in for a little bit. Andy Dalton did have to start one game, but I don't think Panthers are going to be giving up on Bryce Young, but there's definitely still more room for improvement for the former number 1 overall pick out of Alabama. We'll see. Bryce Young also had on the ground, actually doesn't have there. Let me just go over rushing yards wise. So Rico Dowdle led the team rushing with 1,076 yards, 6 touchdowns. Chuba Hubbard, who was dealing with injuries for a lot of the season, unfortunately, had 511 yards and just 1 rushing touchdown. Bryce Young had 216 and 2 rushing yards. Then outside of that, Trevor Etienne had 94. 7th round rookie wide receiver Jimmy Horn actually had 69 rushing yards, so pretty nice there. But otherwise, it was really Rico Dowdle having a really good time playing in Carolina. We'll see if they keep him around come free agency. In terms of receiving, it was Tedero McMillan who led the team with 1,014. The next closest was Jalen Coker at 394. McMillan also had 7 receiving touchdowns. Coker had 3 receiving touchdowns. Xavier Legette had 363 yards and 3 touchdowns. And this was with playing in almost every game. It was just Panthers are going to need more help at wide receiver and definitely tight end as well. We'll see. Tommy Tremble was their leading pass catching tight end at 249. I believe Jatavion Sanders was a rookie, actually in the second round. So sophomore season for Jatavion Sanders, former 4th round pick. But I wouldn't be super surprised if the Panthers try and target a tight end in free agency because their tight end position's not the best in terms of accolade. Actually, I'm going to do defensive stats first. Defensive stats wise, their leading tackler, let's see, combined tackles was Christian Rosenboom, linebacker, who I believe they had just signed during the offseason. Leading sack specialist was actually a tie between Derek Brown and Nick Scorton. So Scorton was the second round rookie, if I remember correctly. Yes, he was. And then Derek Brown's their everything defensive tackle they drafted in the first round of 2020. He's insane. They both had 5 sacks. So pass rush for Carolina, definitely lacking a little bit. Their third on the list is Trayvon Merrick, who's a safety with 3 sacks. DJ Wanham, outside linebacker, also had 3 sacks. So definitely going to need some more help there in terms of pass rushing for the Panthers. J.C. Horn led the team with 5 interceptions. Mike Jackson had 4. Then multiple players with 1. Trayvon Merrick, DJ Wanham, Christian Rosenboom, Lathan Ransom, Nick Scott, and Chow Smith-Wade all had 1 interception. Then in terms of forced fumbles, we had a lot of players with 1. Mike Jackson, Rosenboom, Ransom, Derek Brown, Nick Scorton, Princely, Uman Malin, I think is how you pronounce it. Bam Martin Scott, awesome name. Corey Thornton and Maima Njong Meta, I think is how you pronounce it. Lot of various guys on, mostly linebackers for the forced fumbles, which makes sense. But there's definitely a lot of spots they can improve for the Panthers going into 2026 in terms of individual accolades. J.C. Horn made the Pro Bowl, and Ted Millen won Offensive Rookie of the Year. So there's that. Then finally, let me end it off with just kind of cap space wise. So the Panthers currently sitting at 18th with just plus $7 million in cap space. Though obviously this will change in the coming week before free agency starts. Derek Brown and Robert Hunt and also J.C. Horn all have about $20 million or $24 million against the cap. Trayvon Merrick and Taylor Morton, right tackle, both at $21 million. Tershawn Wharton, $18 million. Ikem Ekwonu, former first-round pick at tackle, $17 million. Damian Willis, guard, $16 million. Ashawn Robinson, defensive lineman, $12 million. Bryce Young, also $12 million. I think he is in his 4th year, I guess, now. So second to last year of his contract. I think technically last year, unless they decide to pick up his 5th-year option. But we'll see. And then in terms of $10 million plus cap allocations, Patrick Jones, edge rusher, at a little over $10 million for this year. So the Panthers definitely have a lot of money tied up, largely in the defensive offensive lines. But we'll see if they try and move on for someone or obviously they're going to be restructuring a lot of stuff, but we'll see. I don't know if they're going to have, a ton of cap space, but we'll see how they go in free agency. Sorry. Next up is the Falcons. Let me move back over to the Falcons. And let me shift around my tabs here. So the Falcons were, they were coming off of, showing some promise with Michael Penix, but there's definitely a lot of room to grow. I feel like I've been saying that a lot, but there is definitely, cautious optimism, but I don't think anyone was expecting too much going in. Free agency there definitely, the draft was really where they started to go insane. But we'll get to the draft in just a second. So free agency wise, they re-signed cornerback Mike Hughes for the biggest contract, 3 years, $18 million. They brought over former Raiders linebacker Divine Diablo on a 2-year, $14 million contract. They also brought over edge rusher Leonard Floyd from the San Francisco 49ers on a 1-year, $10 million contract, former first-round pick in 2016. And then just a lot of smaller contracts as well. So Kyle Hinton, guard, Kaderil Hodge, they brought back a wide receiver, Morgan Fox on the defensive line, Michael Ford at cornerback over from the Browns, Morgan Fox over from the Chargers. And other than that, nothing, super huge. They brought in former first-round pick at cornerback C.J. Henderson over from the Steelers. They also brought in DJ Chark over from the Chargers on a 1-year deal. There's a lot of 1-year deals, a couple 2-year deals. Nothing like insanely big. They obviously had still been paying a lot to Kirk Cousins. And that was certainly a lot of cap tied up there. So he wasn't coming off an injury. He was still, I think, kind of rehabbing his injury from 2023. But it was definitely the Michael Penix show going into the season, essentially. The draft was where they kind of really made a splash. So they picked edge rusher Jalen Walker out of Georgia at pick 15. And then they traded back up into the first round, sending away their second-round pick in 2025, as well as their first-round pick in 2026 to select Texas defensive end James Pierce Jr., Tennessee defensive end James Pierce Jr. They're both Southern schools that start with T and have like an orange color scheme. So that's why I got confused. But yeah, Tennessee defensive end James Pierce Jr. They also selected Xavier Watts in the third round, safety out of Notre Dame, who had a pretty good season. But yeah, it was the doubling down on defensive ends in the first round for a position that they had really neglected for a long, long time was a pretty big news. I also completely forgot to go over coaching stuff for the Carolina Panthers. So I think the only move they had was bring in, I actually don't even think they had any real coaching moves. Same with the Falcons, if I remember correctly. There wasn't really anything. It was still Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, defensive coordinator. So yeah, I don't think there's any real big coaching moves for the Panthers or the Falcons. Falcons also went 0-3 in the preseason, losing to the Lions, Titans, Cowboys. Then week 1 was against Tampa Bay at home, and they would lose 23-20. This was actually, I believe, on a Monday night. No, that was, what am I thinking then? I might be thinking of a week 2 matchup with the Buccaneers. So this was a afternoon game. And they would lose narrowly to the Buccaneers. Yeah, obviously 23-20. I already said that. And then they would actually bounce back in week 2 against the Vikings, who I believe at that point were starting Carson Wentz because I'm pretty sure J.J. McCarthy went down with an injury. They would win 22-6. Then in week 3, obviously the shutdown loss against the Panthers. Then in week 4 against the Commanders, as I said 2 weeks ago, the Falcons would have their best game of the season so far. Michael Penix would have a really nice game against the porous Commanders defense. Falcons would win that game 34-27. And they would go to 2-2. They would have their week 5 bye, then go up against the Bills and actually beat the Bills 24-14. This is one where it was like people started to pay attention a little bit to the Falcons because their defense especially was playing really well against Buffalo. Like the young edge rushers, mainly James Pierce Jr., they were making Josh Allen's life a nightmare. And they really shut down the Bills' offense. Bijan Robinson also had an insane game, 238 scrimmage yards. He had a big 81-yard touchdown run. It was all Falcons, and they went to 3-2. They would then fall the next week in San Francisco, losing 20-10. And it was one where you could tell that the Falcons offense was really streaky. The defense was definitely showing some promise, but the Falcons offense was, outside of Bijan, it just wasn't working great for some reason. And they just couldn't get it all together. Week 8, I don't know why I skipped all the way to week 10. Week 8 was home against Miami, and they would get absolutely destroyed, 34-10. And the skid was on a little bit. The promising start, they go 3-2 and then start a skid, especially losing to Miami by that much. The 2025 Miami Dolphins was rough, to say the least. They then followed it up with a close loss to the New England Patriots in New England, losing 24-23, falling to 3-5. The losing streak would continue as they would play in Germany against the Indianapolis Colts. And they would go to overtime, and Jonathan Taylor, who was bottled up for a lot of the early game, absolutely exploded late. He had an 83-yard touchdown run in, I believe, the fourth quarter. And then in overtime, he also had another big run and would seal. Basically, I think it was him who sealed the game on like a short yardage touchdown run, giving the Colts a 31-25 win. Falcons fall to 3-6, and the losing streak was well and truly on at that point. Then obviously is the Week 11 game against the Panthers, where they would lose again. That one was the one in overtime. So back-to-back overtime losses for the Falcons, basically knocking them out of playoff contention because they were sitting at 3-7 midway through November. They would actually bounce back against the Saints the following week, 24-10, winning that one in New Orleans. So snapping a 5-game losing streak, but it was, it's kind of been a meme of the Falcons where it's like the Falcons are one of the best teams in the league when they have nothing to play for, when they're out of contention. And while they weren't like technically eliminated at this point, I don't think it was. They're 4-7 through 12 weeks. Like, come on, they were done for. They would then also, had basically if they ran the table, there was a good chance they could have made it. They then played the Jets in New York the next week and fell flat on their face, losing 24-27. And, that's really what did it right there, was losing to the Jets, because then they had to play the Seahawks the next week, and that went about as expected. They lost 37-9. That was at home also. Week 15 was, I think they were eliminated. They were eliminated after the loss against the Seattle. And then they proceeded to run the table, basically. They beat the Buccaneers 29-28 in Week 15 in Tampa Bay. They then beat the Cardinals in Arizona 26-19 in Week 16. Week 17, they beat the Rams 27-24 with, I believe, multiple interceptions on Matt Stafford, if I remember correctly. Now I might be considering that or confusing that with a different game involving Stafford, but yeah, they win Week 15, Week 16, Week 17, and it's like against the Rams as well. Like, it's crazy. Then Week 18 against Saints, they win again. And this is the one that sent the Panthers to the playoffs. They win their last 4 straight, so actually making the Rams pick in the first round a lot worse. So they finished at 8-9, just barely missing the playoffs because of it, actually. And yeah, it was not great. Falcons proceeded to fire head coach Raheem Morris and general manager Terry Fontenot. Not super surprising there. I'm surprised Fontenot lasted as long as he did. The Falcons have since hired Kevin Stefanski as their new head coach. Matt Ryan is now their president of football. And then Ian Cunningham, former Bears assistant general manager, is now the head general manager for the Falcons in 2026. They obviously do not have their first round pick, thanks to the trade for James Pierce Jr., who is now dealing with a big old arrest domestic thing that's really terrible and icky, and good chance he doesn't play football anymore. So that's really unfortunate for the Falcons. But yeah, so the Falcons are not in the best spot in the world. I'll just say that. In terms of individual accolades, though, don't think they had anyone. No, they had actually. Never mind. They had a good number of people with personal accolades. So Bijan had first team All-Pro running back and second team All-Pro All-Purpose. Jesse Bates, there at free safety, was a second team All-Pro. Chris Lindstrom at offensive guard was a second team All-Pro, and then Kyle Pitts, who actually had a bounce back season. They have since franchise tagged also. He was a second team All-Pro. Then Pro Bowlers were Chris Lindstrom and Bijan Robinson. Bijan have had a great season, not surprising there. Then in terms of just personal or individual stats, so the Falcons were ranked 24th overall offense in terms of points scored, though 14th in total yards. Their defense was 19th in points allowed, and then 15th in yards allowed, though their defense was actually pretty good at forcing turnovers compared overall. In terms of passing, between Michael Penix, who dealt with injuries, he actually tore his ACL, forgot to mention that. So another torn ACL for Penix, who had 2 in college. So there's a big question mark surrounding him. Penix only played in 9 games. He passed for 1,982 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Kirk Cousins filled in for the final 10 games. Final 10 games, he would pass for 1,700 yards, 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Either way, like the two combined for 3,500 yards, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So the two basically combined for I feel like a average to above average kind of quarterback. Nothing too amazing though, unfortunately. It was really Bijan was the heart and soul of the offense. He had 1,478 rushing yards along with 7 touchdowns. Tyler Algier finished second with 514 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. I think he's going to be a free agent at in 2026. So I guess in like a week, we'll see what happens with him. Penix only had 70 rushing yards, and then Nathan Carter, another running back, had 60 rushing yards. So not much there outside of Bijan. In terms of receiving, it was Kyle Pitts who led the team with 928 yards and 5 touchdowns. Drake London had 919 yards, 7 touchdowns. Bijan actually had 820 yards and 4 touchdowns. So Bijan was, really having a good time. Darnell Mooney had 443 yards and a touchdown. And then it was Davis Sills, Tyler Algier, Casey Washington, a lot of guys with 100 and in the 100 to 200 yard range. So no one above 1,000 yards, but Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, not a pretty decent, pretty decent wide receiver trio, or just receiving trio, because there's actually only one wide receiver between the three, but yeah, pretty decent receiving trio right there, though I would assume the Falcons would like to get another wide receiver to pair with Drake London somewhere, either whether that be draft or free agency, we'll see. So then on the defense side of the ball, Caden Ellis, linebacker, led the team with 107 tackles. Jesse Bates was second with 98. Xavier Watts had 96. Devon Diablo, 73. In terms of sacks, James Pierce Jr. led the team with 10.5. Brandon Dorlus had 8.5. Jalen Walker, 5.5. Lakel London had 5. Zach Harrison, 4.5. So on and so forth. Then in terms of interceptions, it was Xavier Watts who led the team with 5. DeAndre Alford had 3. Jesse Bates also had 3. And then Caden Ellis, Billy Bowman, Mike Hughes, CJ Henderson, and D'Angelo Malone all had 1 interception. And then finally, in terms of forced fumbles, Jalen Walker, Zach Harrison, and AJ Terrell all had 2. And then DeAndre Alford, Jesse Bates, Caden Ellis, Billy Bowman, James Pierce, and Lakel London all had 1. So there's actual some playmakers on the defensive side of the ball for the Falcons. So, I mean, the James Pierce Jr. situation, don't know how it's going to resolve, but even outside of him, there's some good talent on the defensive side of the ball for the Falcons. So I'm interested to see how Kevin Stefanski approaches 2026 with the team he has. In terms of cap space, believe the Falcons have since released Kirk Cousins. They have, let's see. Okay, he is still listed on there at $24 million. He has a dead cap hit of $35 million. I think they're just going to go with that because I think it's been reported that they're just going with that. They have currently sit at 17th, so right around the same place as the Panthers with $8.8 million above the cap zone. Though obviously that's going to change. Jake Matthews, their offensive tackle, left tackle, is currently the most at 27 million. Chris Lindstrom, 26 million. Guard Jesse Bates, 24 million. Kirk Cousins, also 24 million. AJ Terrell, 22 million. Darnell Mooney actually has 18 million. So my guess is they're going to really try and restructure him or just because he has $11 million dead cap hit at the moment. So we'll see how that goes. Drake London has a $16 million dead cap hit. I actually don't remember if they extended him or not. No, he's actually on his 5th-year option at the moment. So my guess is they try and extend him, I would assume. Also, Kyle Pitts is on the franchise tag at $15 million. So I don't know. We'll see. Don't know how exactly the Falcons are going to approach free agency in terms of cap space situation, but overall, should be pretty interesting to see. Don't think I'm forgetting anything else. So we will move right along to the New Orleans Saints. And so the Saints were not expected to really do anything, I feel like, because they were coming off of a pretty bad 2024, and their quarterback situation was basically just Spencer Rattler, who was not exactly anything special. And they certainly had some players, but overall it was not, I certainly had the Saints as one of the worst teams in the league. I think a lot of other people did as well. And going into free agency, the Saints were kind of starting to pay the price of the consistent kicking the can down the road from the years, a lot of the 2020s essentially. So they didn't have a ton to work with cap space wise. They re-signed Chase Young to a big extension, a 3-year, $51 million extension after they brought him in 2024. They signed Justin Reed to a 3-year, $31 million contract, and then also re-signed, or either that or extended. But I think it was re-signed Juwan Johnson to a 3-year, $30 million contract. They also brought back Brandon Cooks from the Cowboys, brought him home, though I believe they traded him not long after. And then other contracts were Isaac Yiadom over from the 49ers, 3-year, $9 million contract. Julian Blackmon on a 1-year deal. Other than that, Jonathan Ballard on a 1-year deal. Cam Akers on a 1-year deal, though I don't even know if he really played at all. Just not a ton for the Saints. The big news was that they had brought in Kellen Moore at head coach. They had also lost Clint Kubiak to the Seattle Seahawks. Basically, Kubiak was the offensive coordinator in 2024 there, and then he went to Seattle to be their offensive coordinator. And I think the Saints kind of missed that because Kubiak. Well, I don't like Kubiak's now in Vegas because he's he's their head coach now. But the Saints the Saints brought in Doug Nussmeier, former Eagles quarterbacks coach in 2024, to be their offensive coordinator under Kellen Moore. I think Kellen Moore calls the plays. Brandon Staley was actually brought in as their defensive coordinator. Actually, I did not realize that at all. I thought he was over with the Rams, but I guess not. But yes, Brandon Staley, former Chargers head coach. So there was a lot of coaching staff turmoil essentially, and basically just an entire new coaching staff. I'm looking at the page for it, and it's feels like every single position was someone else in 2024, and then it was someone new. They actually had Scott Tolzien, former backup quarterback, as their quarterbacks coach, and then Jari Evans, former offensive lineman drafted by the Saints back in 2006 as their assistant offensive line coach. So interesting there. And yeah, so they did lose one of the big ones in free agency. They did lose Paulson Adebo to the New York Giants at cornerback. And other than that, though, nothing too big in terms of losses. And yeah, the big one was really bring back Juwan Johnson, extending Chase Young and all that, and then bring over Justin Reed from the Kansas City Chiefs. Those were really only the big moves. They also released Jamal Williams, among others. So the big anime nerd that is Jamal Williams, former 13 touchdown scorer from the from like back in like 2022 or 2023 or whenever it was with the Lions. I actually think he is still a free agent, might have retired at this point. I'm not quite sure. But unfortunate to see there. They also made a couple trades. They traded away, actually, I think they traded for Devon Godchow over from the New England Patriots for a 7th round pick in 2026. They traded for center Luke Fortner from the Jacksonville Jaguars for Kalen Saunders, defensive tackle, who was, I believe, he was actually a free agent signing in 2023. Saunders is actually now on the New York Jets. And then they also traded for Devon Vele from the Denver Broncos for a 4th round pick, who barely saw the field from what I remember. They also lost Ryan Ramczyk to retirement, as well as Tyrann Mathieu and Jimmy Graham, and also Derek Carr as well. I should also mention that Derek Carr retired. That was a pretty big one. But there was a lot of retirements. The Ramczyk one really hurt because he was their franchise left tackle since 2017, since that absolutely legendary 2017 draft by the Saints. So unfortunate there. In terms of the draft for the Saints, they had the 9th overall pick. And there was a lot of people, especially Mel Kiper, who was mocking Shedeur Sanders to the Saints. Actually, I feel like he was mocking Cam Ward to the Saints because he was probably had Shedeur Sanders going number 1 overall. But there's a lot of people that were mocking Shedeur Sanders to the Saints at number 9 overall. Instead, they went with offensive tackle out of Texas, Kelvin Banks Jr., who proved to be a very good pick from what I know. I think he had a really solid rookie season. Then in the 2nd round, they actually did go quarterback, though they did not go Shedeur Sanders, famously enough. They went with the Louisville quarterback, Tyler Shuck, who was an older quarterback. I think he's actually, he's 26 right now, if I remember correctly. He's 26. Actually, he turned 26 basically at the start of the season, or during the season, but still old for a rookie quarterback. He was actually Justin Herbert's backup at Oregon for a year. Fun fact. But there's still pretty surprising pick there, though. It actually turned out to be pretty solid. They also selected in the 3rd round with a pick from the Commanders from the Marshawn Lattimore trade, safety out of Virginia, Jonas Sanker, who I think had a pretty nice rookie season. And other than that, they had Vernon Broughton, defensive tackle of Texas, 3rd round, Danny Stutzman, linebacker, Oklahoma, Quincy Riley, cornerback, Louisville, Devin Neal, running back out of Kansas, who I always confuse with Evan Neal, the offensive tackle for the New York Giants. And then Maliki Mataveo, tight end, UCLA, and Fadil Diggs, defensive end, Syracuse. Those two in the 7th, Neal 6th round, Riley Stutzman 4th, Sanker, Broughton 3rd, Shuck 2nd, Banks 1st. Now then, to the regular season for the Saints. They would go 0-2-1 in the preseason, so they'll lose first against the Chargers, tie against the Jags for their 2nd, and lose to the Broncos for their 3rd one. In terms of the regular season, they would start with Spencer Rattler in starting out. Basically, they would lose their first game at home against Arizona, 20-13. Then lose their 2nd game, home against San Francisco, 26-21. Then lose their 3rd game, 44-13, against Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. It was kind of to be expected. Then they lose their 4th game against Buffalo in Buffalo, 31-19. Not much was things were progressing as expected, basically. Then they would pick up their first win against the Giants at home, 26-14 in Week 5. First win of Spencer Rattler's career. So good for him. They would then lose to the Patriots 25-19 in Week 6 in New England. Then in Week 7 against the Bears in Chicago, they would lose 26-14. So, that things were progressing as most people expected. They would also lose in Week 8 against the Buccaneers 23-3. Then in Week 9, they would lose again to the Rams in Los Angeles, 34-10. Then in week 10, it was actually the Carolina Panthers win that I talked about earlier. They would pick up their second win of the season, winning 17-7. Then they would have their week 11 bye. Then I believe after that, they switched over to Tyler Shuck. Let me actually double check here real quick and make sure I remember which game it was that he started playing in. So he started playing in week 8. That was when he first started. So it was actually against it was in the Buccaneers game. So it was actually earlier than expected. I thought it was later, but it was earlier. Shuck lost his first couple. Then it was the bye in week 11. Actually, well, I guess he won against Carolina. So it's actually both games against Carolina where Tyler Shuck starts. Week 12 against Falcons. I'd already covered. The Falcons won that one 24-10 in New Orleans. Then week 13 was against the Dolphins. The Saints would lose 21-17 in Miami. Then in week 14, if I can actually scroll down, was against the Buccaneers. And this was one when the Saints actually won 24-20 in Tampa Bay, improving to 3-10. But they actually, 2 of those 3 wins were against division opponents. Week 15 was the Panthers game where the Saints would win 2017. So the Panthers would get swept by the Saints, and the Saints would improve to 4-10. Week 16 was against the Jets. Saints would win 29-6. And Tyler Shuck was actually starting to show some improvements here, I felt like. Week 17 was against the Titans. The Saints would pick up another win, winning 34-26 in Tennessee. Then the season finale against the Falcons, I just mentioned, they would lose 19-17. So finishing with a record of 6-11. But some optimism, actually. Like, a lot better at the end of the season compared to what it was to start out. You know, they went on a 4-game winning streak. Tyler Shuck actually showed some promise. And, for a year where no one was expecting anything, I mean, 6-10 is whatever, or 6-11 was whatever, but there's some promise here and there. I feel like they're not in the worst situation in the world anymore, which is kind of nice. I mean, cap space wise, they certainly are, but in terms of like fan optimism, it's better, I think, now than it was beforehand. So Spencer Rattler, who started 8 games, threw for just under 1,600 yards, had 1,586 to be specific, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Tyler Shuck started 9 games, played 11 total, threw for 10 touchdowns to 6 interceptions on 2,384 yards. So he was actually also finished second in Offensive Rookie of the Year votings. That is to be, it is actually what it was. I am surprised that I didn't realize he was that high up, but all right. I didn't realize that. So anyway, Shuck actually shows the promise, essentially. I'll just finish with that. In terms of rushing, where is the rushing yards? Unfortunately, the Saints just did not have a run game whatsoever. Alvin Kamara led the team with just 471 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. Devin Neal was second with 206 yards, 2 touchdowns. Audric Estime had 198. Kendre Miller had 193. Tyler Shuck actually had 186 and led the team in rushing touchdowns with a solid 3. Spencer Rattler had 167. Taysom Hill had 114 and a touchdown. And it was Saints are definitely going to try and look for a running back, I would assume. Don't even know if Alvin Kamara is still going to be under contract at this point. Or if he is, if they're going to keep him around, because he is definitely getting into that sort of washed territory. Sadly, because I really like Kamara, but it's time, kind of. Then, in terms of receiving, Chris Olave led the team with a nice bounce back season with 1,163 yards and 9 touchdowns. Juwan Johnson also had a pretty solid season with 889 yards and 3 touchdowns. Rashid Shaheed, who was traded midway through the season to the Seahawks for a 4th round pick, I believe, had 499 yards and 2 touchdowns. Devon Bailey had 293 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I think the Saints would have liked to see more out of him. Kamara had 186. Brandon Cooks had 165. They traded him. Or I forget if they traded or released him, but he wound up on the Bills by the time the playoffs started. And then Kevin Austin, Dante Pettis, Devin Neal, Audric Estime, Taysom Hill, various other like between 50 and 150 rushing or receiving yards. Like Olave and Juwan Johnson were really the top two receiving targets for the Saints. So there's definitely a lot of holes on the there's a lot of spots in terms of skill positions that the Saints could certainly choose to fill up come free agency and the draft. On the defensive side of the ball, their leading tackler was, let me do solo tackles, was longtime linebacker Demario Davis, who I don't know if he said he's going to retire, but there's a chance he's going to retire because he's been in the league for a long time. Davis had 64 solo tackles. Lante Taylor at cornerback had 59. Kool-Aid McKinstry also at quarterback, also tied him at 59. Pete Warner, linebacker at 50. Jonas Sanker, 46, rookie safety. Justin Reed, 37. Then in terms of sack numbers, Cam Jordan, longtime defensive end, had 10.5, led the team. Chase Young actually had 10 sacks, so he kind of, not necessarily career resurgence, but honestly, you know what? I'll just say it's a bit of a career resurgence. I mean, he's not like a superstar defensive end that he was touted and drafted to be, but he's carved himself a good time in New Orleans and obviously earned a good bag with them as well, which kind of makes me a little annoyed as a Washington fan, but it is what it is. Carl Granderson had 6 sacks. Nathan Shepard, 3 sacks. Jonah Williams, also 3 sacks. And other than that, a lot of guys with 2 sacks. In terms of pass coverage and whatnot, Kool-Aid McKinstry led the team with 3 interceptions. Lante Taylor and Jonas Sanker had 2 interceptions. And then Carl Granderson, Justin Reed, and Quincy Riley had 1 interception. So not that many interceptions for the Saints. Cam Jordan and Chase Young and Demario Davis all had 2 forced fumbles. And then Quincy Riley, Nathan Shepard, Brian Brzee, Chris Rumpf, and Devon Gottschall all had 1 forced fumble. Their offense was ranked 28th in points scored and 23rd in yards, while their defense was 16th in points scored and actually 9 in yards. So, there's stuff to look out for, essentially. In terms of 2026, they have, I believe, the 6th overall pick. 8th overall pick, that's what it was. So there's certainly plenty of options for the Saints to pick. I think there's a good chance if he falls there, the Saints go with Jeremiah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame. They could also go with maybe Carnell Tate if he falls, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. Could also go with maybe Caleb Downs if he's there, but I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot to choose from, I think, for the Saints in 2026. Or if Sonny Styles, I doubt he falls, but speaking of the combine, because I kind of forgot to talk about it at the start of the episode. So Sonny Styles had just an insane combine for him, and his brother Lorenzo Styles also had an insane combine in terms of the 40 time at least. So some insane athletes coming up in the 2026 draft. In terms of cap space for the Saints, to get back to them, they are not looking great. They are 30th out of 32nd teams in the league and negative $43.9 million in cap. This is largely due to the $90 million in dead cap that they have, the second most by any team. It's obviously not good. The Derek Carr one is obviously the big one because he has the $59 million in dead cap since his retirement. Ryan Ramczyk also has $11 million dead cap. Tyrann Mathieu. So a lot of the retirements they had basically was what really messed them up in terms of dead cap money. Chase Young is the biggest cap hit for the Saints right now at $20 million. Cam Jordan, second most, though he's in a void year, so I don't know. I'm not the best in terms of telling you what that means, but I'm just looking at Spot Track and it says it's a void year. Cam Jordan at $18 million. Kamara is also at $18 million. Don't know. I think it's all like bonuses and stuff because it's listed as an $18 million dead cap hit as well, so I don't know exactly how they're going to get around that, but we'll see. Carl Granderson also had an $18 million cap hit. Eric McCoy, $17 million cap hit. Chris Olave, $15 million cap hit. Demario Davis, $14 million cap hit. There's a lot, essentially. It's like, unfortunately, the Saints, I don't think are going to be able to really turn things around in this year just because of the cap situation they're in. But after this year, I think 2027, you could see them finally start to emerge from the cap hell they've been in for like half a decade and can make some moves in free agency. So I don't know. We'll see. All right, let's move on to the final team in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were, I believe, the reigning and defending NFC South champions. And yeah, they were coming off. I think they were bounced in the first round. I don't know why. Oh yeah, duh. It took me a sec to just completely remember what happened. It's like, oh yeah, they lost to the Commanders in the wild card round. So not exactly the ending they wanted. They also lost Liam Cohen to the Jaguars. Liam Cohen was their offensive coordinator, so they replaced him with someone who, give me a sec, who was their offensive coordinator. Josh Grizzard was their new offensive coordinator brought in. And yeah, it was, let me get to, where's free agency? Give me the Buccaneers. That is not the page I wanted to go to. There's the Buccaneers. So their free agency was pretty quiet. I think as they were pretty close to the cap ceiling, if I remember correctly, because they had recently extended Baker Mayfield, and they had a lot of money placed in a lot of guys here and there. So their free agency was pretty quiet. They brought over Hassan Reddick on a 1-year, $14 million contract from the Jets. They re-signed Anthony Nelson on a 2-year, $10 million deal. Brought over Riley Dixon, the punter. That was their third most expensive contract they gave out on a 2-year, $6 million deal. And other than that, not much, all things considered. They brought in Teddy Bridgewater, though, which is kind of neat as a backup quarterback. But it was the draft where they kind of made a bit more of a splash. They took wide receiver out of Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka. So it's like a little bit of confusion here and there because, they had Olave and Mike Evans, and, the offense might not have been what they really needed to go for, but, like Olave was coming off an injury, so he wasn't going to be fully healthy. He was also 30 at that point, and then Evans was even older and also on the last year of his deal. So, they did kind of need to get a bit younger at wide receiver. So I don't hate the pick whatsoever. The rest of their draft was Benjamin Morrison, Notre Dame cornerback, in the second round. Jacob Parrish, Kansas State cornerback in the third round. David Walker, outside linebacker from Central Arkansas, in the fourth round. Elijah Roberts, SMU defensive end, in the fifth. And then Oregon wide receiver Tez Johnson in the seventh, who actually had a pretty, couple of nice catches here and there in 2025. I remember that. They also signed Shiloh Sanders for a hot minute in the off season, but he was I think he was he punched a guy in a preseason game. That's what it was. And then he got cut after that. But Shiloh is the younger brother of Shedeur Sanders, and it's son of Deion. So there was just that little bit of extra extra drama or spotlight. That's the word that I was looking for. A little bit extra spotlight, essentially. So moving into the seasons, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went 2-1 in the preseason. They beat the Titans and Steelers and then lost to the Bills. Week 1 was the win against the Falcons. Then week 2 was a win against the Texans. That was on the Monday night. That's the game that I was thinking of. And yeah, that was a close one against the Texans that started off hot and then it went slow. Then it got hot again. It was a bit of a stop-start type of game, but it was a nice win for the Buccaneers. They then wore their creamsicle jerseys against the Jets in week 3 and won at home 29-27. So, really nice start for the Bucs. And Baker Mayfield was looking really nice. I think I had him as an early MVP candidate by week 5. And it was starting great. And then they lost the Eagles in week 4, 31-25. But still, it was what it was. They also had lost Mike Evans to, I believe, a shoulder injury in either week 2 or week 3. I think it was week 3. And that was a hamstring injury. That's what it was. They did get back Chris Godwin and Tristan Wirfs, but the Mike Evans going down was rough. And then week 5 was against the Seahawks. This was the really cool unicorn, or not unicorn. I don't know why I said that. Uniform matchup between the Bucs and the Seahawks. So they're both wearing the throwbacks, the Bucs and their creamsicles, and the Seahawks and I don't remember what the name they had it for, but the the old 70s, 80s Seahawks, the retro look that they have for their uniforms, and those look awesome. So this is a great uniform matchup, and this was an awesome game as well. It was a big shootout. Buccaneers would win 38-35. And yeah, it was great. I think Bucky Irving also, I think in week 4, went down with an injury that kept him out for a good while, actually. Week 6 was against the 49ers. They would win that one at home, not in San Francisco. I was misreading the text. But they would win at home 30-19. And they're sitting 5-1. Pretty good. Then they kind of got shut down a bit by the Lions in Detroit, 24-9. Though they would bounce back, obviously, against the Saints, as I had said before, 23-20. So they were going into their week 9 bye. Mike Evans was out for a good bit with hamstring, I think also shoulder injury, which really sucked. And Bucky Irving was also out for a good while as well. But going into the week 9 bye, going into week 10, they were 6-2. Obviously the favorites to win the division. And then things started to fall apart. They lost 28-23 at home against the Patriots in week 10. Then they would follow it up with a 44-32 loss against the Bills in Buffalo in week 11. Then lose again against the Rams, getting absolutely destroyed 34-7 in Los Angeles in week 12, falling to 6-5. So big losing skid right there. Baker Mayfield also suffered a shoulder injury in week 12 against the Rams, where there was a point where I think it was right at the end of the half, he was trying to throw a Hail Mary, and it was just, he was not looking healthy whatsoever. It was an AC joint sprain in his non-throwing arm, and also a shoulder injury or something as well. And you could tell Mayfield was playing hurt for basically the rest of the season. It was very similar to him in 2021 with the Browns when he had his partially torn labrum, and it was not good. They did, as I said earlier, they bounced back against the Saints in week 14, winning. Actually, no, never mind. I read that completely wrong. It was the week 13 that they bounced back. They lost the Saints the next week, but they bounced back against the Cardinals week 13, 20-17. Then it was week 14 they lost the Saints 24-20. Week 15 against Falcons was Falcons win 29-28, which really hurt the Bucs. Week 16 was the Panthers game where they lost 23-20. So they fall to 7-8 and were really starting to lose control of the NFC South. They would bounce back in week 17 against the Dolphins, winning a narrow one, 20-17. But even still, it's you could tell at this point they were going to be limping into the playoffs if they were even going to make it. And obviously they did not. They would beat the Panthers in week 18, but the Falcons win against Saints made it so that they missed the playoffs in the end. And I'm trying to remember if I had said any Saints Pro Bowlers, because I know they had one. The Buccaneers had Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr. make the Pro Bowl. Let me just go real quick to the Saints, because I don't remember if I did. Chris Olave made second team All-Pro. That's what it was. They didn't have any Pro Bowlers, but Olave made second team All-Pro. So yeah, very, very disappointing season for the Buccaneers. Lots of injuries really hampered them. In terms of individual accolades, so their offense was 18th in points scored and 21st in yards. Their defense was 20th in points scored, or I guess points allowed, and 19th in yards allowed. Then for passing, it was Baker Mayfield, who had 3,693 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. So not quite as good of a season as he had the year before. And, definitely not compared to not the season he had compared to the start of the season, compared to how it ended. And obviously injuries definitely played a good part in it. Teddy Bridgewater also played in a couple of games, he had been coaching high school the summer before and came back and threw 8 times for 62 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So there's that. In terms of rushing yards, it was Bucky Irving who led the team in just 10 games played at 588 yards with only 1 rushing touchdown. Rachaad White was right behind him at 572 rushing yards. He played in all 17 games. He also had 4 rushing touchdowns. Baker Mayfield was third on the team with 382 yards and a touchdown. And then Sean Tucker was actually fourth on the team, 320 yards, but 7 touchdowns. So Sean Tucker, I believe, out of Syracuse, former, let's see what does it say? I was actually owing, cool. Why does it not say, was he an undrafted maybe? Maybe he was undrafted. I don't know, because it's not saying here where he was drafted. But yeah, Sean Tucker, former running back out of Syracuse, kind of emerged a little bit as like a running back 2 option. So Rachaad White is a free agent. My guess is the Bucks do not re-sign him, and they might just roll with the Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker combo in 2026. In terms of receiving yards, Emeka Egbuka led the team with 938 yards and 6 touchdowns. He had a really, really good start to the season where he looked like a lock for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And then when everything started to go wrong for the Bucks, he just completely disappeared. I know he dealt with an injury for like a little bit during the season. He played in all 17 games, but he only started 13. So I think it was like he was kind of like on a snap count for a few games. I feel like I remember him being injured a little bit here and there. Cade Otton was second on the team in receiving with 572 yards and a touchdown. Sterling Shepard was third on the team with 371 yards and a touchdown. Mike Evans, 368 yards, 3 touchdowns, playing in only 8 games. So his streak of at least 1,000 yards in every season of his career was snapped, unfortunately. Chris Godwin, also only playing in 9 games, had 360 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tez Johnson had 5 touchdowns on 322 yards, and Bucky Irving had 3 reception touchdowns. Rachaad White, Jalen McMillan, Cameron Johnson, Sean Tucker, and Ryan Miller were also guys with various other receiving yards for the Buccaneers. On the defensive side of the ball, their leading tackler was longtime Buccaneer Levante David with 114 combined tackles. I'm actually do solo tackles. Solo tackles was 66. I'll actually go back to combined because I think that's what I was doing before. Servakia Dennis, I might be Servakia Dennis, was second on the team with 101 combined tackles. Tyke Smith was third on the team with 100. Antoine Winfield Jr., Jacob Parris, Zion McCollum were 4th, 5th, 6th. In terms of sacks, it was Yaya Diaby who led the team with 7. Vita Vea, 4.5. Levante David, 3.5. Servakia Dennis, 3. Anthony Nelson, 3. Son Reddick, 2.5. So pass rush, not exactly the Bucs' strong suit. Definitely, I think Kalijah Kancey had dealt with injury for, I forget if he was out the whole year or not. He only played in 3 games. That's what it was. So he was a guy I think they were expecting to contribute, but unfortunately he got injured. So we'll see how it goes the season after that. In terms of pass coverage, Jamel Dean led the team with 3 interceptions. Jacob Parrish and Antoine Winfield Jr. had 2. Then Levante David, Servakia Dennis, Anthony Nelson, Tyke Smith, Zion McCollum, Kendall Vildor all had 1, and then forced fumbles. Jamel Dean, Levante David, Anthony Nelson with 2. Antoine Winfield, Yaya Diaby, Hassan Reddick, Logan Hall, Christian Eatson, and Josh Hayes all had 1. So now we move to the cap situation. Actually, let me do draft situation first for the Bucs. They are selecting 15th overall in the 2026 draft, and they also have a 45th overall pick in the second round. So we'll see how it goes there. And then in terms of cap space, they're actually 16th in the league with $11 million over the cap. Basically nothing in terms of dead cap, which is good for them. So we'll see how they try and restructure things around. Baker Mayfield is currently their leading cap hit with a $52 million cap hit. Tristan Wirfs is their second most with $36 million. Godwin, third most with $33 million. My guess is they try and shuffle his contract around a lot because he currently is sitting at a $49 million dead cap hit. And I doubt the Bucs would try and just bite that, or like eat that whole dead cap. like just eat the whole contract, but obviously Godwin has not produced as they expect. So we'll see how it goes there. Antoine Winfield has a $27 million cap hit. They're definitely not getting rid of him. Luke Gedeke has a $22 million cap hit. Same with Vita Vea. And then Zion McCollum has a $15 million cap hit. Mike Evans has a $13 million, but he's a void year, so I think he's going to be free agent. And other than that, it's really like the top few, like the Mayfield, Worst, Godwin contracts are what's really taken up most. I mean, between the three of them, that is 39% of their cap space. Throw in Antoine Winfield, that's almost half of their cap. It's like 48% of their cap hit right there is between those four players. So if my very, very quick math off the top of my head is correct. So yeah, we'll see how the Bucs approach free agency. That will be for next week. So yeah, as I said at the top of this episode, I will probably be doing an extra episode, or maybe I might just be replacing my Saturday episode with a free agency recap, because next week will be the NFC West for the Tuesday episode. And I'll probably just go over some like the initial news from the Monday and Tuesday, but we'll see. I don't know, depending on how long it goes. But yeah, that will be for next week. For now, though, that will do it for this episode. Yeah, thank you very much for listening.